Hello, this is BSJ, and this is going to be my next video in the coaching simulation course on GameLeap, and we are going to be talking about a concept that I've been ranting on stream about, which we refer to as the dead lane. So, to start this video, I'm going to give you a background of why the dead lane exists and what it means. First and foremost, what a dead lane means is that it's a lane that if you simply try to farm it by yourself or go there during your farming patterns without a specific reason, it is considered the most dangerous place on the map and will often result with a lot of random deaths, as well as preventing your team from accomplishing objectives. So in any game of Dota 2, despite how far ahead one team is of the other, this concept exists. So if it is a very even game, when it comes to lane pressure as well as getting your lanes pushed out, it should be a very even fight because of the fact that the net worth is even. So in an even game, the idea is that you cannot control all three lanes. If you have a hero top, coming from the Dire's perspective, if you have a hero top, a hero mid, and a hero bottom, all pushing lanes, the enemy team knows that you are not together, and that you're on opposite sides of the map on two of your heroes. So what that means is you're easily gankable. And no matter how far ahead you are, maybe if you have the luxury to do this, if you're 20k net worth ahead, all you're simply doing is giving the team that's 20k behind a semblance of chance to come back by picking one of your heroes off as a group of 5. So the dead lane concept exists because no matter how far ahead or far behind you are, you cannot control all three lanes without leaving yourself vulnerable to death. So especially when you're ahead, that means that the dead lane exists because you plan to control 2/3 of the map. And so first, that's why the dead lane exists. Secondly, we're going to talk more about the dead lane. So the dead lane is almost always one of the two side lanes. And the idea is that if you're going to control 2 lanes, the reason why it's bad that you can't control 3 lanes is because of how far apart you are, meaning that it makes it easy to gank. So the dead lane is almost never the mid lane because of the fact that the mid lane is closest to each of the side lanes. So the dead lane is almost always the side lanes. So next step is to ask yourself which side lane is the dead lane. And for most games, I'd say about 90% or more, for Radiant, it's the bottom lane, and for Dire, it's the top lane. It's your own safe lane. And this concept starts existing past about 10 to 15 minutes because of the fact that around that time, most supports have their level 6, as well as most cores have those 1 or 2 early items that they need, making you at much higher kill threat, or being much more vulnerable to getting ganked. Prior to that time, most carries or most heroes in general are much more difficult to gank because the enemy team hasn't gotten what they need in order to kill you. So there kind of hits this critical moment somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes where farming your own safe lane becomes the most dangerous place on the map. So if you're a carry player or even just a mid laner or an off laner, any core that looks to pressure and farm, the reason why this is the most dangerous place on the map is because if you farm as Radiant, if you farm the top lane, and you have taken this tier 1 tower, and this is going to explain why this tier 1 is more important than this tier 1 for Radiant, as well as why this tier 1 is more important than this tier 1 for Dire. If I take this tier 1 tower, because the shrine's right here, I now have access to 2 extra camps that were previously not safe. On the other hand, if I take this tower, none of these camps are safe in comparison to what they were before, because the enemy still has a shrine. Same goes for Dire taking this tier 1. None of these camps are nearly as safe anyways because there's a Radiant shrine right here. So that makes taking this tower the most efficient tower for Radiant, and this tower the most efficient tower for Dire, because Radiant gets these 2 camps to farm, and Dire gets these 2 camps. So the whole idea of taking towers in this dead lane concept is understanding what map control means. And all map control is that you're able to farm more than the enemy team. You have more camps, more lanes, more creeps to hit. And if you get more map control, you're just going to have higher net worth because you're farming more creeps than they are. So the idea is that first off, this tower for Dire and this tower for Radiant offers them the most map control for how easy or difficult it is to take the tower. The mid lane tower offers a lot of map control, but it's oftentimes very difficult to take because the team can easily defend it with all of their heroes, because it's in the mid lane. And as we talked about, the reason why the side lanes are also more vulnerable is because it's harder for your team to help you, but it's also harder for the enemy team to collapse all of their resources onto their own safe lane, because if they want to bring everybody, they either have to be there ahead of time, or they have to TP in one by one, and that's sometimes chaotic. And if you notice, almost all of your bad tower defenses, almost all of them, will be your team sloppily going in one by one to defend your own safe lane. And that synergizes with the idea of the dead lane. So by taking this tower, we open up 2 camps. And if you're a safe lane carry or the hero that's supposed to pressure this lane in, the reason why this is the best lane to be in for Radiant, and the same idea for the Dire down here, is because they have a shrine here and a tower here. So if you place a ward somewhere in this area, that is the only path that they're going to be ganking from. There's no other way that they can flank you if you're farming these 2 camps. So if you're farming this camp and you know you're in danger, you have a distinct route to get out, running away from where the enemy team could be coming from, which is this area. As opposed to if I'm on the Radiant side and I'm farming this camp, they could come from here, they could come from here, they could come from the lane here, or they could come from even coming from pushing their lane. So there's much more vulnerability between these 2 camps when I'm Radiant, and the same goes for Dire though. With these 2 camps, if I've taken this tower, the only direction they can come from is this one. So that also allows you to provide ward vision as a support, and also makes it easier for you to be protected by wards as a carry, and it makes it so you have a planned escape route when you're farming. So knowing that the reason why this is safer is because of their one gank path also helps you with being safe with your farming patterns. So the importance of the dead lane concept is that you understand the idea of lane pressure. And what lane pressure means is that your creep waves are shoved into their towers. And the importance of that is, first off, information. If their creep wave is at their tower and you see nothing, that gives you information. And what I mean by see nothing is you see no enemy heroes. Because if you see no enemy heroes and there's creeps hitting their tower, that tells you they're doing something. They're ganking, they're roshing, they're looking to push a tower themselves. It gives your team information even if you don't see anything. But if you are not pushing creep waves into their tower, every time you're blind on the map and you don't see anything, they could be doing anything on the map. And it's really difficult to prevent random deaths, as well as yourself casually dying, if you have no idea what the enemy team is doing. So if you have no idea what the enemy team is doing, and your creeps are hitting their tier 2, it's very good for you to just hide and wait for them to show themselves. And that's okay because they're losing a tier 2. But if you don't know where they are, and you're not pressuring their towers, then having to hide feels very bad, because they could all just be farming as 5. They could just be farming 5 separate places. And then while you're sitting there doing nothing and being scared, they are farming. So the point is, if you know that they aren't defending this tower, if they are farming, even if they aren't defending, then they are losing a tower, and that's a big deal in the grand scheme of things. So that information is very important. Secondly, the idea of the dead lane is that since we can't control all 3 lanes, it's much better that we localize our farm. Something I see very often in 3K, 4K coaching sessions is a split pushing hero pushing this lane, then rotating through the jungle and pushing this lane, then rotating through the jungle and pushing this lane. If you apply equal pressure in each of the 3 lanes, that simply leads to the enemy team not being forced to react to you, because it's similar to having somebody gently press on 3 different parts of your body, as opposed to somebody punching you really hard in one spot. That may be a terrible analogy, maybe you think it's stupid, but it actually applies in this case. If you're putting a ton of pressure and forcing them to react to one lane, not only does that make them reveal to you what they're doing, but it also makes it very difficult for them to push other towers because they're dealing with you. That sets up a lot of chaos because they're constantly worried about defending their tower. So that sets up 5v4 fights because they're reacting to your split push. That sets up random pickoffs that the enemy team is setting up for you because of the fact that you're forcing them to split up. So the idea is the team that does this pressure better is forcing the enemy team to react to them and you're going to take fights on your own terms. So the idea is, with this dead lane concept, and you're going to see this in all of the examples that I'm going to present to you, as well as a few exceptions for when the dead lane's in a different lane, and why, the impact that this has, as well as showing the fact that this lane for Radiant and this lane for Dire really doesn't accomplish anything for you. If you want to pressure this tier 2 as Radiant, you can efficiently farm jungle camps if they push you off. So you're either making them show up and defend, or in which case you're going to the jungle and farming still, or you're taking the tower. But if I was Radiant and I tried to pressure this tier 2, if I force them to show up and they stop me from pushing, I have to go much further to get jungle farm, as well as we talked about how much more dangerous this jungle farm is than this farm. So that's why this is the lane for Radiant, and this is the lane for Dire that you always want to be pressuring, because it's simply safer and more efficient for you. So we're going to be presenting you with some examples, and you're going to hopefully see why all of the negative impact that you have when you go to this safe lane, as well as on Radiant. And the point is, it's not that you never go to your safe lane, and we're going to talk about this in these later examples. The point is that you want to be here as Dire, and you want to be here as Radiant, unless any of these cases that I'm going to present to you show themselves. Because the idea is this lane's the most dangerous. So if you force 4 people on the enemy team here as a Radiant hero, that also may allow you to go to this lane, because you've made it safe by forcing them to deal with you here first. So with the dead lane concept, I want you to bear in mind the most important point of the dead lane. If you are looking to pressure them, meaning you are the strong hero, you are the split pusher, you are survivable, you go to this lane as Radiant. So if you're pressuring, that means Dire's only purpose for this lane is to relieve the pressure. That means that if you're a Dire hero, you need to understand, and this context, and it applies to every game of Dota, that your existence in this lane is to relieve pressure. So if you are a strong hero that's supposed to take towers as a Dire hero, you should virtually never go here, because that is not your job. And it also doesn't accomplish anything compared to going to the opponent's safe lane. Last point about why the opponent's safe lane is so nice is, if I'm a Dire hero and I'm pressuring this tier 2, that gives me the option to go through their jungle to gank or pressure the tier 1 mid. So by having this area open, I'm much more easily able to take the tier 1 mid. Does not apply if I take this tower. It does not make it easier to run through this shrine to get to mid lane. Same thing with Radiant looking to pressure Dire tier 1, as opposed to running this way to get Dire tier 1. So taking this tower, for all the reasons we already mentioned, for farm as well as where you want to be on the map, also opens up the next tower, which makes it so that you basically have an objective plan applied from the same concept. So we're going to go into some examples that just show you firsthand applications of this concept.